Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're going to be talking about something very dear to my heart. You know, I've realized that in life, all of us are different. We're different people. We have different things about us that are amazing. We have our own personality. We have everything that makes us unique. But the interesting part about it is sometimes we can embrace our uniqueness and sometimes we don't. Some of these unique qualities can be considered, a possible disability. Something that we are seeing in this world, in this lifetime, as having a disability, but it's just different from other people. And I find that many of us on this planet do have some sort of disability of some sort. And it's interesting how we have to work really hard to accept ourselves, connect with that self-esteem component, that self-worth component, and really work on that because of judgments in our outside world, in our community, and even people we know. And I find it interesting when we take this concept and we take it from a human perspective to an animal perspective, it really puts things well clear. And I think that that's powerful. And I think that nowadays our children need to be connecting with the fact that we're all equal no matter what. That our children, not only our children, but the adults, we need to be connecting with that in our life as well. And I found someone that has written an amazing children's book, and I don't think that children's books are necessarily children's books, right? I think that children can consume these books just as much as adults can consume these books, just as much as adults can read these books to their children, showing them the pictures at night or during the time of reading during the day. We've had a lot of reading time during COVID, and I think that this is an inspiring book that inspired me. And I've read it already a couple of times. And the author is joining us live here on the show. And the title of the book is A Home for Sally. And A Home for Sally. And it's a great book. And it's about a puppy that has a disability. And, it's interesting how in our society today we call a disability like somebody's deformed. And I don't like that word at all, but it has to be used a lot of times because that's what people really say. And if you've ever been categorized that, and I understand it, if you've ever been categorized that, it is extremely painful because it really puts a Jedi mind trick on your brain, and it makes it really hard for you to see your value. And so this book is very powerful, A Home for Sally. And I want to introduce you to the author of that book, who has been an educator for over 20 years, has committed herself to educating, enhancing, and creating awareness of moral, social, and religious ideals for children. And, a powerful woman, to say the least. And we're going to introduce her right now, Stenetta Anthony. Stenetta, great to have you live on Live Your True Life Perspectives. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? I'm glad to be on the show. Thank you for having me on, Ashley. I appreciate it.
I'm just glad to have you on. And we had a conversation the other day, and it was really powerful. And you're a powerful woman doing some powerful stuff. And, I know it started in the education, being an educator for a while. Tell me more about your background and what that drive is to educate and to connect people on a social level.
Well, being in education, I often tell people that you're more than just someone who's in the classroom, just a teacher in the classroom. You are a friend, you're a sister, you're a brother. Sometimes you're a mom, sometimes you're a dad. You're a social worker. You're kind of everything that particular child or children need in maybe a 5 or 5.5 hour day. And even beyond that, beyond those school day, you go into where you're taking them home with you, or you're taking them into your adulthood with you. And so it's it encompasses everything. You, as an educator, you talk about things that you shouldn't talk about, I'm going to say, on occasion, because sometimes children open up and you try to shut them down and say, okay, we don't want to talk about that because of legal purposes. But sometimes it does happen because they need to discuss whatever it is that they need to discuss. And sometimes it involves home life. And so it's an interesting thing being an educator. And then as an educator, over 20 years, I taught kindergarten through third grade. And so now I'm seeing my students, my former students who have gone off to college and gone into careers. And I feel proud because I feel like I had a part in their life and in their development. And so when sometimes I run into someone, they'll say, "Hi, Mrs. Anthony," and I'll say, "Hi." And their voices are deep and they're tall and just everything. And it's just a proud moment for me to look and see, what you have grown into as a person. And so morally, your values have changed since maybe your kindergarten, and maybe some religious things have changed, and even maybe some sexual things have changed. But you have grown as a person, and I had a part in that.
That's powerful, and it's interesting. I look back at my favorite teachers, and you remember them, and you remember interacting with them like it was yesterday. And I find that a teacher really is impactful, and can change a student's life forever. And it's such a valuable place to be. And it's interesting how underrepresented teachers are in this country, and a little bit of how out of whack our values are. But at the same time, it's like the ability to be able to connect with those kids, in the formation of learning and helping them to succeed is a very powerful place to be.
And it is, because they remember some things that you don't remember. They remember, and you're like, really? And it's really funny. And even though they're young, we say because they're younger, because I did teach kindergarten. Kindergarten was my primary grade, and I think I like that grade the best is because it's allowed me to be dramatic. Because as adults, sometimes we don't want to be dramatic, but when children and you're in a certain setting, you can be as dramatic and fun as you want to be, and it's okay, and you're not judged in any type of way. And so when they say, okay, maybe we played a particular game or we did books or whatever we did, it brings a fond memory back to me, and then it brings a fond memory back to them.
And that's powerful. Memories are powerful, especially when they're extremely positive. I find that you're extremely spirited. I was reading your book, A Home for Sally, and what was your inspiration to write this book and to create this character, this puppy named Sally?
Well, it was twofold. One was, because of being in the classroom, and throughout the years, I had the opportunity to teach children who were special needs. And so, excuse me. And so that was one part. I wanted to feel like their voices need to be heard, even if it's through the life of a puppy, it needed to be heard. And the second part was watching Saturday morning television, and I was often watching segments about pet adoption and dogs, and I never seen anyone feature a special needs dog. And I understood that completely because you want to put the best foot forward because of the adoption process. But I just often wonder, where are the other dogs who are missing something, that may be blind or maybe deaf or maybe missing a paw like Sally is, or has some type of disability that no one looks at. And so I thought about writing a book about well, actually a dog. I didn't think about a dog at first. I thought about a child, but then it evolved into a puppy. And so we just kind of went from there.
I love the puppy that you've created, and it's interesting because in the book, you have folks that come in and try to adopt various dogs, and then it's adoption time, and then you see that all the dogs that came in at the same time as Sally have been adopted, and then Sally's waiting, and how that creates emotional drama, stress, anxiety. On the dog, and that's an interesting too, because I think that also kind of segues into the emotional component as a human being, dealing with not being like everybody else and trying to fit in and trying to overcome whatever that is, and I think that's interesting, that juxtaposition that you have there.
And you know what, I agree. I know that the book was written for children, but it crosses over into adulthood too, because as adults, sometimes we're viewed, we discussed this the other day, people look at us in a certain way. They look at us in these, maybe it's our eyes, our ears, or the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we dress. And then people judge us according to that without even knowing who we are. And that affects us emotionally. We have so many things in our society today that we're all unique. I'm going to say we're all unique. Everybody's different. Okay, so we're all unique and everyone's different. And so when we look at society sometimes today, we try to emulate other people and what they look like, and we feel like that's what we should look like, or that's how we should behave, instead of accepting that this is who I am. I'm going to use a Bible phrase that says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so we are unique, we're different, we're wonderful, we're beautiful, we created our eyes. I have brown eyes, and I get a lot of compliments on my eyes. And I've had people to say to me, I wish I had those color eyes. Well, these are what I was born with. But they're my eyes, and they said, and then I've had people to say, well, maybe I should buy me some eyes like that. Why do you have to buy some eyes like that? Aren't your eyes okay? And so with the Home for Sally, it kind of crosses over where she looks at herself as with her deformity. I don't like that word, but that was the word that I used to press my point forward. And she had to learn how to accept herself with her disability and all, and say that no matter what her friends said, because that's part of what's in the book. And so we have friends as children and adults that may say something that's hurtful to us about our appearance. And we have to move past that and say, I'm okay. I look okay. And you may not like the way I look, but I like the way I look.
I agree with you, Stenetta. When we return, we'll be talking more about this. We'll be talking more about disabilities and valuing oneself and seeing that, and also talking a little bit about unconditional love. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about, fitting in. We're talking about disabilities. We're talking about how, an animal with a disability kind of mimics, like a human with a disability, and how this connects. And today I have an author on the show, Stenetta Anthony, that recently wrote the book, A Home for Sally. And Sally is a puppy that has a disability. And the disability that, people overlook her when they're adopting pets because she's got this disability. And then we see how Sally goes through, a stressful time, overwhelmed, feeling like she's going to be discarded or overlooked. And then the book continues. Stenetta, it was interesting when we were talking right before the break. You were talking about how your eyes. People have brought up, oh, you have amazing eyes. You have beautiful eyes. I wish I had those eyes. I want those eyes. And you're like, well, these are the eyes that I was given. Isn't it interesting how people want different things? It's like apparently what they have isn't good enough.
And you know what? And that's one of the things is we, of course, I try not to talk about plastic surgery, but plastic surgery is a big thing. And so we have many people in our society who want to emulate someone else and even look like a Barbie doll or something like that. And so they spend thousands upon thousands and sometimes millions of dollars to look like someone else. But then they're changing the outside, but what about the inside? Because you can look different on the outside. I can change everything about me. I can change my hair color. I can change my size. I can change my clothes. I can change everything on the outside of me. But what about the inside of me? I still may have those emotional struggles that I brought from childhood to adulthood. I can have that low self-esteem. I can have all of these things that are negative on the inside of me, but I look gorgeous on the outside. And so we have I can't remember exactly what it says. Beauty is skin deep. Yeah, beauty is skin deep, and it is. It's actually skin deep. And you can see a beautiful person, but they have nothing. I don't want to say they're airheads, but they have no substance at all. They're just a beautiful, beautiful person, and that can cross whether it's male or female. And so we have to be careful that we're not just looking at just an outside exterior of a person. We need to look deeper. How is this person emotionally connected? Are they stable? Are they sound? Are they 100% whole? And I strive to be a 100% whole person. So that means I have to look at myself and I have to judge myself, the good and the bad, and see what is it about me that's not good. And sometimes it may come from another person. And sometimes it may come from a child that's saying, okay, you have a bad attitude. And I may think, okay, I don't have a bad attitude, but we do know that children are brutally honest. And so if a child tells you you have a bad attitude, you may have a bad attitude. And you need to think about, okay, do I need to check this attitude? What can I do about this? And so the book, it just touches on those different areas where it like I said, it's written for children, but it can go over to adults because we have emotions that we need to deal with all the time. And we have struggles as adults that we need to deal with all the time. And we have to be truthful again with ourselves, saying, okay, this is who I am. And when I need to make adjustments, I need to make adjustments. And I need to make adjustments accordingly. And I believe that sometimes if you need to speak to a friend or something and get an honest opinion about yourself, you just have to get that honest opinion and take a deep breath, take a woosah moment, and say, okay, this is what I need to do.
I agree with you. And it's interesting. I think one of the things is that, you've been taught, and I think it's interesting how I think through societal teachings, we're supposed to trust people that are beautiful, skin deep, right?
Right.
And that's interesting. And it's interesting how you can trust somebody that looks a certain way, even when they're not even giving you any sort of information to trust them. And their actions are speaking louder than words. But it's always interesting, and it's something that I think we need to teach our children. Not that people that are beautiful on the outside are not good people, but I think, being able to look at all levels, okay, yes, they might be beautiful to look at, but, what do their actions say? Or, what kind of person are they? Do they care about other people? Do they have empathy? And I think empathy is one of the things that some people have so much of and some people lack. They don't have the ability to be empathic, to feel what it feels like for, to another person, or to go through their pains or struggles.
And I agree, because we do have to have empathy one for another. We can't just pass people over, because there are many people who go through struggles, and we don't know why they arrived at the place that they arrived at. And where it seems that one person I believe that you could have two people in the same position, and one person seems to get out, and the other person continues to struggle with that same thing, whatever that is. And so there is something within each of us that we need to decide, how can I get past it? Or how can I help this person to move on past whatever that struggle is that's within them? Because sometimes it's just where you need a helping hand. And I'm going to just share a personal story. A few years ago, it was an area in Chicago where I used to travel, and so we have something called viaducts. I don't know if that's everywhere, but we have viaducts. And every day I would pass up under this viaduct when I was going to school, and I seen this movement. Well, I knew it was a homeless person. I just knew it was a homeless person. And I passed by every day. And so one day I said, I think I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to call the police. Well, I didn't call the police. I called our local homeless shelter place. And when I called, I was a little shocked, because the person that I called, when I told them where I was and where the person was, they said, I know exactly where they are, and we pass through there every day, and we've gone to assist the person, but they don't want any help. And so you can have two homeless people in the same predicament, where one is saying, I don't want any help from anyone. And then you could have another person in the same predicament that we've seen and we've heard stories about that come up. And so what is it that makes it, you can have two people that want a hand, but if you come to a person without empathy, sometimes, of course, they're going to refuse your help. So you have to show some compassion. You can't say, I'm the big rescuer, I just came to rescue you. You need to show them the love and the compassion that they need to get from point A to point B to Z, and just continue on throughout their lives.
I love your story, and it is about compassion, and it is about helping and giving back, and I think a lot of us do a lot of that in our day-to-day life, like you, Stenetta, and it's a really rewarding situation, but a lot of times people don't really know what to do, or maybe they don't understand, or they don't have that compassion. I think having that compassion is what really pushes our life forward, and being able to feel good about our life and feel good about our intention and helping other people. When we return, we'll be talking more about value. We're going to be talking more about the desire to be loved, and that's what we all want, and how to understand that, and also how the book directly relates to that as well. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about love. We've been talking about being different. We've been talking about disabilities, and we've been talking about how people see other people. Joining me live here in studio on Live Your True Life Perspectives is Stenetta Anthony. Stenetta wrote a recent book, which I think is great, A Home for Sally, and it really connects. We have the puppy that has a disability. Some people use the word deformed. Both Stenetta and I don't really like that word, but at the same point, that's what people say, and so we're putting this all in perspective. And right before the break, we were beginning to kind of connect with the fact that everybody wants to be loved, and even in this book, Sally wants to be loved. And Stenetta, I think that's really the direction of this. And when Sally is able to be adopted, I think that's when we see Sally's true self, because now she realizes, she's valuable, but she was questioning that value because she'd been looked over so much.
And I agree. Everybody wants to be loved, and we have to be careful that we're not overlooking one another, and we're not saying because you don't look like me or I don't look like you that we're not, worth loving. And so that's part of Sally's story. And so with children, we don't want to be looking at them saying because you're a child you should be overlooked. And there was a phrase that I don't know when I was younger that you were, as a child, you're supposed to be seen and not heard. And I'm glad that has passed over because now we do see and we do hear children and we hear their hearts, and even adults. We want to be loved, and we don't always want to be seen and not heard, because you could be an adult and sit in a room and no one know that you're there. You have no voice, and they just pass you over and they say, oh, I didn't even realize that you were there. And then you could be sitting there and saying, I've been sitting here for about an hour. You didn't know I was here? You didn't see I was here? And so it's important that we recognize and we accept, and I'm going to say, even greet each other when we come into each other's presence, to say, okay, we may not have an intense conversation, but just to say hello and say that you are loved, I appreciate you, welcome being here. And I believe that's Sally's story. She wanted somebody to love her. She was looking for somebody to love her. She was longing for somebody to love her. And there are a lot of people in our society today that are in that same predicament. They may not be reading a children's book, but their emotions are feeling, I want to be loved. I love. And we have social media, and we say that through words, but words mean nothing without action. And so action always speaks louder than words. You don't have to do a big thing to show that you care about someone. You could just do a little small thing. You can do a little post-it, or you could send a text, or you could give somebody some water, just something very simple and basic, just to say that I love you and I care about you. We just passed Father's Day, and just the cards that you get or something just to say, I love you, I appreciate everything that you do for me, and I am not overlooked.
And I agree with you. And it's about like kids and everybody, adults, all of us, animals. It's about, taking time to cultivate a relationship. And just like Sally, when you adopt an animal, it's about taking care of that animal. It's another being in your household. It's another soul in your household. And, recently we've been talking about the COVID, situation where a lot of the shelters were emptied because of, so many people adopting dogs. And, how do you feel about that, Stenetta? What are your thoughts on that direction?
You know what? I really think it's fantastic that so many people are adopting. I'm glad that they're adopting special needs dogs. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, we don't want to have the Christmas syndrome. And I think I shared this with you the other day. The Christmas syndrome is, I get the present, I wrap the present. It's a fantastic present. I'm excited about it. It's Christmas morning. But then New Year's Eve, I done threw the present to the side. And we hear that with children all the time. I bought you this fabulous gift, but the next day you're not even playing with it. And so if we choose to adopt during COVID, like I said, I don't want to put it that it's not a wonderful thing, because it is. But in that process, you need to really do a soul search and say, okay, this is not a temporary situation. COVID is temporary. We know it's going to pass at some point or another. But this dog, cat, or whatever you adopt, they're alive, and they're not going to pass in a few months. They are for a lifetime. They are for death do you and that pet apart. And so we're adopting, we're adopting now, think about that. Don't take that dog's life and say, okay, I'm going to adopt you. We're going to have you for a few months and then take you back to the shelter, because that's a yo-yo where you're just playing with my emotions. And we have a lot of songs about playing with their emotions. So you're just playing with that dog's emotions to say, okay, I'm going to take you in for a little bit, but then I'm going to play with you for a little bit, but now I'm tired of you, and so I'm going to take you back. And so now you're taking the dog back into the same situation, same circumstances, and then they're feeling the same way again. And is someone going to want me? And so we want to make sure that we're making a conscientious decision when we adopt. We're not just adopting just to be adopting. We're not adopting just because it's the new fad, or because I'm lonely at the moment and I need some company at the moment. Think about that this is a life, and this life has meaning.
And I agree with you, Stenetta. And I think everybody out there listening in the Live Your True Life family, I mean, I think for most of this is, y'all are like, yeah, I totally get it. But I think sometimes, people don't realize. I mean, if you haven't had a pet, you don't know, the time length that it is, and you don't know the dedication. And, I have a dog, and I love my dog, and he is my family member. He is my child, and, I wouldn't have it any other way. And when you've had a love for an animal like that, and every single dog that I've ever had, is a beautiful soul, and it took me a long time to get through the mourning process, but it was always an amazing experience, and I would not trade those experiences for anything. And when you get there and you realize the love, and that's the key here, is to understand the love and also give that love back. It's not about just taking. It's about also giving. And I think that a lot of people's hearts will be warmed around this time, but you just have to realize that this is a lifetime thing. I mean, as long as the animal is alive, but also, respecting that animal and treating that animal with respect. There's a reason why dog is God spelled backwards, and there's a concept behind that. And I think that the value has to be seen appropriately. Instead of, I find that also, kids and adults, their lives are so much more enriched, with an animal in the home.
And I agree. We talked about, we had a moment the other day when we talked about the loss of a pet, because I lost a pet. And that that pet was a part of me. That was my family. That was our family, not just my family, but my husband and my children. That was our family. And when we lost our family, we lost a member of our family. We lost a love of our family that we had since they were 6 weeks old until they were 17. And so it was a great, great loss for our family. And we still talk about our Chippy Chip, and how she was just a wonderful thing. And it was just a blessing to have her in our home, and just to have her presence, and just to have her greeting you at the door, and just the everything. That's all I can say, just the everything with her, everything.
I feel the same way, and I think anybody that's listening to the show feels the same way as well, is that, when you have that animal and that love, it's just life-changing, and it's something I would never give up. And my father, when he lost when we lost the dog when I was a kid, and I was in school, I remember he could never get over it, and I understand that, but it's just it's awesome to be able to get over it and to move on and to be able to share more memories. When we return, we'll be talking more about the book. We'll be talking more with Stenetta about the value, of every life and also that unconditional love. And also we'll be providing some information on how to find Stenetta and how to connect with that, how to get the book, how to resonate with her social media, and the list goes on. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we have Stenetta Anthony live here. We've been discussing A Home for Sally. Stenetta, I know that, there's a connection in your own personal life that you bring up when you're sharing the story with the children. Can you talk about that on the air right now?
Yeah, I can. One of the things is when I was 2.5, maybe 3 years old, I had an injury to my middle finger. And I often use that when I'm going out to schools or I'm talking to children about Sally. And so usually before I open up the book, I usually share my story. And my story is my middle finger is one that I was embarrassed about for many, 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 many years because it always sticks up. It's not doesn't look like a normal finger. And so I was embarrassed about it because it would stick up as if I was using profanity. But that was not the case. It was just the way my finger is. It actually has some type of rod in it to keep it from where I almost lost it. I almost didn't have the actual finger. And so I have a rod in it that keeps it straight. It's a little bit. But when I'm talking about it, I usually scratch my head on purpose and my finger sticks up. And I usually hear that word, "Ooh, she's saying a bad word." And it leads me into me explaining that I'm not saying a bad word, but this is actually how my finger is. And so for many years, it's actually my left hand. And I did not want to use my left hand because every time I use my left hand in a certain manner, my finger would stick up. And people would look at me and I was like, okay. I got to go through the explanation. And after a while, you get tired of explaining the same story over and over and over and over again. And so finally, after some years and well into my adulthood, I began to think, okay, I thank God for my finger because I could have lost my finger. It may not look like everybody's finger, but it's my finger and it's a part of my body and it is who I am. And so with children, I often explain to them that, it could be something that happens in your childhood that causes something that looks normal at one age that may look a little normal at a different age, an accident or something, which was in my case an accident. According to what I've been told, was someone slammed a door on my finger accidentally, and it damaged a nerve in my finger. So when I'm talking, like I said, when I'm talking to the children, I often explain that to them, that we all have something that is unique and different about us, and it could be one accident that changes your life forever, but you should never be ashamed of that accident because it makes you who you are and what you are at right now at this time in this place.
That's powerful, Stenetta. That's powerful. You have your own personal story, and that's what's it's true. And we all have something that we're dealing with, and it really puts it in perspective, And I bet and it's hard. You have the story that you have to tell, and it gets overwhelming after a while. But I'm glad that it connects with the children, and they can understand and then reflect into their own life.
Agree. I agree.
Lasting thoughts on the show, because I think that one of the things that I really love about you and your book and the work that you've done is about, just everybody wants to be loved, and understanding that we, to look over certain things and to realize that we have been trained to believe a certain thing. We've been kind of, seduced into believing certain things by media, magazines, television, etc., the way we were raised. And it's like letting go of those preconceived notions and connecting with people at a real spiritual kind of human level, spiritual level, where we can accept things and actually see the value in people, and that perfection is not something that's needed, and it's not even something that's real.
And you know what? And we have to accept the reality of how people are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because we all have something good about us. We all have something bad about us. We all have something ugly about us. But then we all have the lovely part of us. And so most of the time we want to put our best foot forward. And even if we're not putting our best foot forward, and on occasions, we still need to be loved, no matter what your attitude is, no matter what your disposition is, no matter what you look like, no matter your size, no matter your age. We all want the same thing. We all want to be loved. And it's a human connection, and it's a animal connection as well.
Stenetta, where will folks be able to find you and connect with you on social media?
Okay, well, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn.
And then they look at, so for your website, it's StenettaAnthony.weebly.com.
Yes, they can find me there. So just shoot me a note and I'll answer you back.
And on Facebook, Stenetta-Anthony, and at Twitter, at Stenetta A, or on Instagram, yes. Stenetta Anthony.
Yes, that is all of them. So I have a unique name, which is a blessing for me. So you can find me.
Well, I can't wait. And I appreciate you, Stenetta. Lasting thoughts for our audience today.
Lasting thoughts is if you're going to adopt, make sure that you're making a conscientious decision about adoption. And just remember that we all want to be loved, no matter whether we're human or we're animals. So that's my lasting thoughts.
Beautiful thoughts. Stenetta, thank you so much for coming on Live Your True Life Perspectives. Looking forward to having you back on here in the future. I'm sure you got a lot of books up your sleeve and a lot of things that you're working on.
Oh, thanks so much, Ashley, for having me on.
What a great show today with Stenetta Anthony. I just appreciate her coming on and her honesty and her truth and her compassion. For everybody out there, it's all about unconditional love. You got to find that unconditional love for yourself, though, and you got to figure out how to do it. And that begins with this book, and it begins with what we're talking about, and being able to be okay with the things that aren't perfect about yourself, and be okay with that, and walk through the struggle and embrace it eventually, and find that love for yourself, and then you can love other people unconditionally. I hope you love the show. I hope you connected with Stenetta. You can go find her on social media right now. And guess what? We got another show coming up for you next, but Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shades.